Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Oni Anukem. I'm a storyteller, a communications consultant, and also a psychotherapist in training. But this evening, I have the special honor of being here as your host and in the capacity of Caroline Anukem's first and foremost eldest daughter. So, I am really, really excited to kick off our conversation and bring my mum up. But before we do, I just want to run through how we'll be going through this evening and give you a little preview of what's to come. So my mum, Caroline Chinyere Anukem, is an educator and inclusion specialist, a wife, sister, friend, and mother of 4 daughters, my 3 amazing younger sisters. And she is now the author of Uniquely Me, Journey to 60. That's the reason we're all here tonight. It's not an official book launch. It's really, me and my mum sitting down and talking about some of the themes that come up in the book. And opening up a space where you can ask some of your questions, maybe share some memories or blessings as well. Let's get started. And we are in webinar mode, so your cameras aren't on unless you come up to the stage, but you can engage in the chat and use the reactions. I can already see some reactions coming through. Thank you so much for the support and any questions that you'll send through that we can get to at the Q&A. And just bear in mind that the event is being recorded. So if you would like to come up and ask your question, you will be featured on our final recording. So hopefully we get a few brave faces deciding to come up and speak to us, but you are free to engage and we want it to be as accessible as possible. So if you would prefer not to be on camera at 7 p.m. in the evening, that's perfectly fine. You can drop your question in the chat. So I turned 32 9 days ago. My birthday was on the 19th of July. And my mum was 28 when she had me. And so, I've been thinking about, the parallels of time. And it was such a gift to be able to read her book, Uniquely Me, in the run up to my birthday, and to sit with that and to see the ways that, our lives are similar and the ways that they diverge, and the roots underneath those all. I want to start by introducing my mum in her 5 names, which you will know if you've read the book already or you're familiar with her. But they really speak to her essence. So starting with Caroline, it means free woman, song of happiness, and it's, also very associated with Liverpool for her. Then she has Chinyere, which means God's own gift in Igbo, our native language. And then she has Adakama, which means the first daughter knows how. And, that name is definitely befitting in so many ways. My mum knows how on so many things you wouldn't be able to even imagine it. And then Adanna, which means her father's daughter. And then last but not least, and I want to add emphasis here because this was the name that she gave herself, Chimbulumeze, which means God has done great things for me. So without further hold up. We're going to bring up the woman of the hour, our author, who I will be in conversation with this evening. And she will start by situating us in the book with a place that feels right for her to begin. Welcome
Good
up, Mama.
evening. Good evening. I'm going to start with something that means a lot to me, and everybody who knows me knows this, and that's the section on family, the people who hold me. Family. My father would say, nothing like a united family. And after 60 years, I know how right he was. My family is not just a noun, it is the architecture of my life. It is not a place, it is a practice. When I say family, I mean doing, living, standing up for each other again and again. My mother was the keeper of our culture and language. She spoke Igbo to us at home, even in Liverpool. She cooked our foods. She taught us proverbs. She passed on stories of who we were and where we come from. She was a storyteller and a cultural guardian. I carry her cooking, and her voice is in me. Every time I cook soup or put on a traditional outfit, I feel her standing beside me, complimenting me for knowledge I never quite realized I learned. My father is steadiness made human. He was playful. He listened to your opinion and was never quick to anger. He was our rock. He named me Adannaya, his daughter, and he has never stopped meaning it. His love has always been present and constant. He sent me a letter when I was in university and said, for as long as I'm alive, never worry about money. And I can say he has kept that promise, but not just money. He has been there at all junctions. My siblings, my oldest friends, Patricia, my Trish, I've known you since I can remember. We share a laugh code that still makes strangers wonder if we're all right. You loved me fiercely and kept me grounded. Hope, my BP, my baby sister, you fight for those you love with endless generosity. You are proactive, creative, loyal. Emeka, my brother, Opera Majo, you are simply the best. Your laugh filled rooms and lives. I still hear it when I'm alone, and I carry it with me always. My husband Stanley, quietly and consistently, you are yourself. You are my partner in every sense. You have quietly learned the language of me, my tears, my smiles, my adrenaline rushes. We began as friends, and out of that friendship, we built everything. Wherever life goes, I carry you as my constant. You are my nukes. Our daughters, Onyeka, Nemi, Demi, and Ebere, you are my finest achievement. Each of you fearless in your own way. Each taught me about love and myself. You bring joy and meaning to every day. It is a privilege of a lifetime to be your mother. I have come to think of family as architecture, structure on which everything else stands. When everything else moves, family is what holds. At 60, I see this more clearly than ever. I am held by many hands, and I'm grateful for each of them.
Leaving a bit of space there for that to land. It was definitely emotional in parts for me, and I think that's because it's true. Family is such a core theme in the book, but more than that, family is at the center of who you are. family is at the center of, how I was raised, and also my values in how I live my life. And I can definitely see, that beautiful image that you gave us of family being architecture, the really the foundation that holds you and carries you forward through different seasons of your life. I know that some of the names as well that I shared were bestowed upon you by family as well. So I feel like that's a good place for us to kick off our conversation. So let's take it back. So one of the stories that you talk about early in the book is when grandma and grandpa bought their property on Arundel Street. They were being let go as tenants of where they currently lived, and they did something quite remarkable at that time in being able to purchase their first property. Um, did the significance of that, did it land for you like when you were younger, or is it something that as you've gotten older you've started to see more as exceptional and not the norm?
Definitely. As a child, I didn't really see anything spectacular about it. Possibly didn't know the full story neither. Um, but growing up and hearing the story over and over again, I realized how commendable it was. But not only commendable, there's another element of the story that I don't share in the book. Um, my father came to England in 1962, and he was joined by my mum. He was in 1965. So from 1962 to 1966, he was saving fiercely. And dad says how he would go to the bank even to deposit £1. So when the landlady threatened to evict them and no other properties were coming forward, he decides to buy his own house with the money that they'd saved to go back to Nigeria because they were going to go back. That was the plan. But the finance company with which he was saving, 2 weeks after they purchased their property, went bust. And they were only going to give back money to those who had in excess of 50,000. So their entire life savings would have disappeared. So dad spins it another way. Thank God for Karu, because had your mum not been expecting you, we wouldn't have bought the house and we would have lost all that money. So they did something that was extraordinary, but it just shows that discipline and commitment. And they refused to be kicked out. They refused to move to another city because they were told that some cities were less racist than Liverpool, or the racism wasn't as rife as it was at the time. But they didn't. They purchased 25 Arundel Street. And that was a special house because it wasn't just a home to us. During the Nigerian Biafran War, they opened up the doors to many, and it almost became an informal refugee camp. If you were hungry, you could get food at 25 Arundel Street.
And so you can see that, family as strength being extended beyond the bounds of biological family there. Just with that last bit that you brought up there. And you really see that, yes, you have your biological family, and it requires maintenance of those relationships. But there also is a thread of chosen family that comes up a lot in the book too. Moving to Liverpool, being thousands of miles away from their loved ones and everything that they had known up until that point. They really were instrumental in forging a sense of community in Liverpool in the 60s, 70s, and beyond. And I know that's had an impact on you and how you build community as well too. So something else that grandma and grandpa did that was perhaps, outside of the ordinary was a detour from their plans. So they didn't end up going back to Nigeria. We know they stayed in Liverpool mostly. But there was 6 years where you lived in Zambia. And I know for many folks reading the book, and for me now, I think since I've moved to Canada, albeit at a different stage of life, migration and getting to experience that firsthand can shape you in ways that you'd never imagine. And one of the things that you talk about a lot in the book is how your time in Zambia made being a Black person just the norm. It wasn't the Black doctor or the Black bus driver or the Black hairdresser. It was just, the judge, the entrepreneur, the lawyer. And that came in at a formative, point in your upbringing and your, building of your own self-image. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna open it up there to speak about how things got to be that you ended up living in Zambia, and then how that ultimately impacted you individually and the family unit.
So I think the move to Zambia was again that continued drive to accelerate and keep growing. Um, Dad was in a profession in Liverpool, he was working, he was lecturing, but he wanted to move on. He wanted to do something different. He wanted to impact the continent he came from, and didn't want to stagnate. So he took this decision to move to Zambia as an expatriate. I don't know if he could have imagined the impact of going to Zambia, because I don't think at the time, even in all his wisdom, did he think this is going to give my children this space. But it gave us so much more than what could ever been imagined. So it's very difficult to slip into things that are difficult and not natural, but slipping into Zambia was just so easy. We got to Zambia, we started school. It was just so different. Zambia, as you said, it just there were people like you all around you. Moving from Anfield, where we lived at the time, where in the school, my siblings and I were the only Black children, bar one other, moving to a school where everybody was the same. Visually, we were different in some ways because we sounded totally different to everyone else. We had Scouse accents. We were different. I remember pronouncing things different to everyone else. A teacher once told me to say crocodile was crocodile, but I didn't because I was proper Scouse, and I said no, it's a crocodile, and that was one of the differences. But Zambia gave so much. It was a place that we really did feel at home. We thrived, all of us, but also it united my siblings and I even more than ever before. The four of us were just so us. It was the four of us. We did everything together. We played together. We learned the language together. We could speak in Inyanja and Bemba, and my parents couldn't understand it as well. My dad knew one word very well, and that was zikomo, which means thank you. But I mean, thank you isn't quite a dialogue. But we could speak the language. We could say things in code, and that was wonderful. But the ethos of Zambia itself, the president at the time, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, his mantra of Tiende Pamosi, moving forward with one heart, really aligned with what our family value was. Um, Maduike, which is my maiden name, means people are strength. And further to that, our family mantra is Idinotu Wike, unity is strength. And then we get to Zambia and the president says Tiende Pamosi. Well, it all ties in together. You see that in whatever language, whatever structure, it was really pulling things together. So academically, all of us really thrived in Zambia. I All of us just reached our own peak. I even took Zambian language in grade 7 and I didn't fail it. I mean, I was really proud of that. But it was a beautiful experience. It made us grow in many ways, and it built a confidence that I carry now that I didn't really realize was built then. But in the book, I do touch on the sadder part when we left, before we left Zambia, where we were burgled, and it was a rather traumatic burglary, and it really made the latter days difficult. But the beautiful thing that I still see, even in the burglary, it brought us as a family, as siblings, even closer together. So in that negative, there is still a positive thread.
Yeah, I mean, your time in Zambia is so alive. I mean, I felt it through my childhood. The stories, crocodile has come up many times there, and just the bonding that came through taking on this, life-changing experience together hand in hand, and how that deepened your sibling relationship, as well as just your like family resiliency as well. um so you did mention you returned to Liverpool, so I want to take us back to Liverpool now. How old were you when you came back to uh Liverpool from Lusaka, Zambia?
I was 15 going on 16. Probably thought I was 25, but I wasn't,
As you do,
um,
as you do.
as you do. And it was different. Liverpool was still Liverpool. The street names were still the street names. But we came back different.
Hmm.
There was something about us that was different. And integrating back into Liverpool, though may seem straightforward, came with its own challenges. Again, whenever we're faced with challenges, it tends to pull us closer together. So it was, we're not like everyone else, we're different. So it pulled us closer together. There was the desire to come back to Liverpool, really wanting to come back, especially because the tail end of Zambia wasn't fantastic. But suddenly, you get back to Liverpool, and for a moment, Zambia felt more like home than Liverpool. People were different. Students spoke to teachers differently. The things that we came and carried from 6 years from Zambia were not necessarily the norm. And it took readjusting back into Liverpool, the place that had always been home. And it took a little difference. But what it meant was I didn't feel those limitations that my peers felt. I didn't feel because I was black or because I was Nigerian or because I was this. It just didn't sit with me. In the 6 years we'd been in Zambia, it was enough to shape our minds to believe that we could achieve and our colour wasn't to be a barrier. Now, it wasn't quite straight playing it, sailing. There
Hmm.
were situations where I personally didn't face the racism that my parents faced in the 60s. In my school, I didn't face what my brother faced. So the language used, racist slurs didn't come over in my education, but there were subtle things that were different. And it wasn't just my school, it was the society. And that's something that we had to come back and really reframe ourselves and keep that belief that had grown and not let that disappear.
And you connect that as well to your professional journey and how um, you know, having that confidence tested, I guess, in a way, in coming back to Liverpool. Yes, it was built up when you were in Zambia and reinforced by, representation all around you. But now being in an environment where, you're experiencing hostility, albeit not outright in your own personal experience, but still just this feeling of, I'm different or I'm not fully accepted. Um, I guess you write in reflection now how those seeds were planted there, but was that something that you were conscious of as you went out into the world of work and thought, oh, this is what I
No,
want to
not
do?
not at all. I wasn't directly conscious of it. It's definitely a reflective conscience. Um, it was constantly reinforced. We grew up in the environment where we were told you have to do twice as hard as everybody else
Mm,
because of your skin color. That was my parents' experience. Now, we had the time in Zambia where that wasn't the reality. We just had to work hard. You had to study hard to achieve. It wasn't tied to your complexion or your ethnicity or anything else. So we come back and this narrative starts coming back again. That's what people are saying. But we in ourselves didn't really feel it because we thought, no, you work hard and you achieve. I just have to put in the effort. I have to be focused. I have to do things. I'm not limited. But gradually that begins to etch at you. Um, and I know my brother, for example, in the school he went to, um, things were a lot different. His experience was very, very different. There was
mm,
overt racist remarks. There were, he would come home having had to deal with people directly making racist slurs at him. And it really made him have to shape greater resilience there. And I think that's where that thing that was instilled in us back in Zambia was playing, but we didn't really realize that that was what was doing that work. It was growing up later that you then said, aha, that's where that came from. Because why were we different? Why did we see things different? Because we would say, we're not like them, and we're not like them. We were just us. So we weren't the people who didn't move on from Liverpool. We weren't people that felt limited by our colour. But we did see that the society was trying to do that. The teachers would say, "Oh, why do you want to do that? That's hard." And there was an assumption that you're black and you're working class and that's really great for you, trying to set things at a lower bar. But we didn't. Um, I say thanks to my parents. They gave us that confidence, but Zambia definitely played a big part in that confidence.
yeah, no, I can see that, and I mean, I just also wanted to acknowledge that even if the overt racism wasn't directed at you, seeing your brother being the target of that also has an effect. You are the eldest daughter, and so I imagine, it would bring up that protector part in you as well. And so also being, you know, younger at that point and not necessarily able to advocate in the way that you can now. I can see how, you know, the secondhand impact of that, and obviously the first hand impact to Uncle CM as well. So things never just happen, you know, in isolation. There's that, you know, rippling. And speaking of things not happening in isolation, you know, you're back from Zambia now, but the thread of Zambia stays alive, you know, in your life up until today. You still have close friends that you are in contact with. And in the book, you mentioned wanting to do a return trip as well, and go back to a place that was once home, and that you still hold. Um, how did you manage juggling those three worlds of, you know, being unapologetically Scouse, also being like deeply Igbo and raised and shaped by Igbo cultural values, as well as now this time in Zambia? How did that look? Like, if you can bring it to life for me a little.
Growing up, a lot of it seemed like separate worlds. So you'd go to school, and not all of you went to school. The Igbo side wasn't in school. The things we learnt in Zambia wasn't in school. So in school, there was that desire to just fit in and be like everybody else. We didn't talk about what we ate at home. It was just different. So there were almost, I'd say, a Jekyll and Hyde, but almost that. So you were one person in school and you came home. And for my mum, culture was so important. So she always said, this is who we are. This is who you are. So whatever goes on outside, you close these doors, you can as well be back in the depths of Nigeria, because that's the practice, that's the norm, that's the culture that was shared. And she equally was influenced by Western life, but I think she knew that that teaching was going to happen outside. So therefore, at home, that kind of was the life. But coming to about 18, 19, a group of us in Liverpool kind of wanted to have both sides of our identity. We didn't want to keep the Igbo side away. So we formed a dance group called Umada, a meeting, and it was a great space, because in that space was the beginning of really embracing our heritage publicly. It wasn't hidden. We wore traditional outfits. We really took on who we were. And I think that was the turning point where we began to join these together. And back in Liverpool, when there was the first Live Aid concert, Umada performed there. And it was really spectacular. And we then sort of really, right, it's wonderful. We actually do carry two languages. We can do more. It wasn't a hindrance. And that was the first time I really see actively that we tried to pull it together.
Yes, I'm just thinking about the benefits of intentional engagement. Obviously, when you're growing up, you're being steered, but also, you know, in deciding, like, we as young women want to, out of our own agency, start this meeting and dance troupe. You're able to embrace it without, you know, a feeling of obligation, and you had a successful career as a dancer there. I mean, that's definitely something you should be adding to your bios, because yeah, no, it adds for the richness there. And you can see the early organizing. I know that you spoke about dancing there, but Umada did, you know, more in the community beyond that, and so yeah,
Yeah,
that was
we really
incredible.
got a voice. One of the wonderful things was the Igbo community in Liverpool was really strong, but there was Igbo women, there were the Igbo men, and Umada got their voice there. So when the Igbo Jubilee was organized, we actually featured in the planning, and it was really nice because we really felt we had a say in how this was directed, not just performing the meetings, the planning committee. We held our space there. And again, this grew that desire to belong, that belonging. We were participating. It was our event. So it was really, really, it was a really nice era.
Is a great point for us to pause for a little, and then I will read one of my poems and we will come back into conversation. So I wrote this poem when Mama was 28 as part of my mum's 60th birthday gift this June. And it was a remix on an original poem that I'd written for her, years earlier. And in looking at that original poem, I saw that there was so much more about my mum that I had learned. I think I wrote the original poem when I was 18. So, I'd had some time to get to know you more, and to realize that your life didn't begin when I did. So this is an excerpt from when Mama was 28. Mama was 28 when I arrived, younger than I am now. This is the part that keeps catching me, because in 2012, I wrote as if she'd always been Mama, as if she entered the world already knowing how to gather us, dress us, cover us, correct us, laugh at us, pray over us, and send us into rooms with our heads held high. But now I know there was a Caroline before us, a girl before the daughters, a woman before the title, a life before the procession. And before Caroline was my mama, she was her mama's daughter, my grandma's daughter, her baby, her first worry, her answered prayer, her girl before she became the woman we all leaned on. I think about that now too, how no woman arrives alone, how mama's laughter had a mother, her courage had a mother, her fear had somewhere to rest before it became bravery in her own hands. Maybe some of what held us had already held her. Maybe the way she gathered us, fed us, dressed us, corrected us, laughed with us, prayed over us, and sent us into rooms with our heads held high had roots I couldn't see in 2012. A grandmother somewhere in the roots, a mother beneath the mother, a line of women learning, losing, trying, carrying, and still finding ways to make beauty. And then I came, screaming and crying, tiny and demanding. And somehow she became a mother in real time. So maybe the truth is this. She raised me, yes, but I raised her too. Not because I was responsible for her, not because a child should carry a mother, but because becoming happens both ways. I made her mama. At the same time, she was making me Oni. I love you. I love you so much,
Too,
Mama.
darling.
Um, I I want to stay with a theme that came up in the poem, the daughter beneath the mother, for our last segment before we invite folks up to come and ask questions. Because when you're young, you just see your mum just as that. You can't imagine that. She was a baby, toddler, little girl, teenager, all before she became your mum. And I know that definitely was true for me. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to see lots of the layers, the pre me, and the parts of you that like exist outside of me as well. And I'm glad that you wrote this book because it also furthers that in being able to share more of your story. um I want to something actually that we hadn't spoken about. Like a lot of the things that came up in the book, I'm like, we've had conversations on these because we have our unique Oni and Mama conversations where we can talk on any topic, uh, present, past, hypothetical. We tend to go long and deep. But something that I really held on to in my reading of the book was the difference for you between sorry and ndo, and how um, you describe them as having totally different uh, impacts on you in terms of your feelings. Yes, ndo might be translated to sorry in English, but it means so much. um, can you share more about Ndo and just how words can
Yeah.
have different meanings in different language?
I mean, language is so beautiful. Being able to express yourself, having language to express yourself. Um, I never really fully thanked my parents in real time for ensuring that we could speak and understand the language. Um, Again, it was one of those things that we just did, and you didn't see it as a big deal. But to be able to feel things in more than one language is just so powerful. And I remember as a child, I'd fall over, hurt myself or something, and I'd go to my mum, and mum would kiss it better. It was this thing, mum would kiss it better, and you'd stop crying. But she would also say, "No, mum." When she said that, it was like the pain had gone, and it was really, really powerful. But a time that this word came back in its power was during grief. Um, until you've been to certain places in grief, until you've experienced it in yourself and how you experience it, there's a set loads of words. My deepest condolences. I'm so sorry for your loss. A lot of words. And I found these were words that I used myself because they were the thing that people did. But they didn't help. They didn't offer me condolence. They didn't console me. They were actually painful. Um, Calling my mum's death a loss just didn't sit with me. But I read the book Grief Notes by Chimamanda. I think people must have realized that I needed to read it. So I was gifted two copies, one from yourself and one from my mother-in-law. And when I got to that line where she referred to the word ndo, not taking away the pain, but not being like a weapon, it just sat there and it just was ndo. And to me, though the literal translation is sorry, in that space, it just told me, I hear you, I see you. You're in pain, you can be, but I'm saying ndo. And that word just means something different to sorry at
Mm.
that time. It just carried a different weight. And I see that with a lot of words in different languages that I've come to speak over the years. But it just gives a feel. So I talk about thinking in English. My place of thought is generally in English, but there are certain feelings, expressions that can only be conveyed in Igbo.
Yeah, I had never thought of that before, but as I was reading it, I felt it too. I mean, I'm not fluent in Igbo, nowhere near. But there are certain words that are very alive for me, and that image of, falling over and grandma bending over to like kiss my knee or wherever I'd been hurt and saying Ndo is very much alive for me, and it does hold me in a deeper way than sorry can. I mean, I guess, sorry for me, it really depends on like a lot of the context. It's, the tone of voice, the additional words or gestures that come with it, because sorry can be so automatic. It can
I think
be,
another point is
without
sorry
thought.
had always felt like an apology.
Mm, hmm.
Ndo doesn't necessarily always feel like an apology. It's not that you've done anything wrong. It's just Ndo. So it just has
Mm,
that different feeling.
yeah. Well, I think this is a good point actually for us to invite some questions before we come to your final reading. So let's see what we have. Okay. And we've got a question in from my dad. Okay. I will read out the question. So, if the incident hadn't happened, when did your parents plan to come back? Do you recall whether you were happy about the prospect of coming back? So this is in reference to your time in Zambia. Before things took a turn, was there any conversation on returning to Liverpool? And
I
yeah, how
think
did you
if the
feel about it?
incident didn't happen, I think if the incident didn't happen, my dad would probably have taken another contract because they were 3-year contracts. And my belief is, especially for our positions in school, I think the decision would have been to take another contract. My mum's business was doing really well. We were doing well in school. I feel that that would have been the route they would have restayed. Was I happy to come back? Yes, I was. I was definitely happy to come back because of that safety and security issue.
Yes, yeah. I think that it was the right time for you all, both with the immediate crisis and feeling unsafe, and then just how everything else maps on from there. Now, in reflection, it seems like that was when you were meant to come back. So yeah, and then we've got another question in from EJ here. We've got, how did you decide what to include in the book and what to leave out? 60 years is, a good amount of time, and you've got a lot of life material. How did you decide?
Right. If I was writing everything, I'd still be writing it now, maybe for the next 60 years. So I had to edit at some point. But actually, the message I wanted to convey was that you can hold more than one. I don't have to let go of this because of that. Use my husband's words, he loves to say, it's not mutually exclusive. I can be Igbo, I can be Scouse, and I can be Zambian, and I can be a mother, and I can be a sister, and I can be all the things at once. So it really, I wanted to really convey in the book stories that showed there were different parts, but it's still me. And that was my essence. So that's how I made the decision.
And I know that you've spoken about continuing on with writing. So hopefully this is the first of more to come, and there'll be an opportunity to go deeper into certain stories and themes. You're a natural storyteller. We've got another question here coming in from Olalekan. And that's, you have beautiful kids. Thank you on behalf of me and my sisters. As a mother, what is your secret to raising 4 girls?
No secrets, no formulas. It is definitely something that you have your grounding. So your principles are there, but all 4 of these amazing women are individuals. It isn't a one size fits all. So I've tried to raise them, and they've been raising me with what seems best for each person at every given time. I've got it wrong, so badly wrong at times, and I do ask for their forgiveness constantly for the mistakes, but my intention has always been there, and raising them has been from a place of love, place of respect, and allowing them space to grow.
That's a beautiful answer. I'm going to use my host privileges to bring us to the last question before we go to your reading. In the family, you have earned the title glitterati. Glitterati. There's various versions going around, and that's because fashion is truly one of your passions and gifts, especially, audacious fashion, and not in the like avant-garde way, just, colors, bling, the more of the story, the more likely it's in my mama's closet, which I do raid still. But if you had to pick one signature look of Lady C, what would it be? It would be great if I had the photo for this right now. In the recording, I will add it. But what look is undeniably you?
Well, sparkle is there, as you've said, but if I had to pick a look that I have to wear this for the rest of my life, one look, but that's not me. It would have to be Coco Chanel.
I'm going to have us close off with a final reading from you. Thank you to everyone who has joined us this evening. It's been wonderful. And if you're watching the recording after the fact, thank you as well for joining us.